Namaste, good morning, and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our Sunday morning service. This morning, the topic is on the goddess Durga. So I'll begin by chanting the Durga Suktam, which is found in the Mahanarayana Upanishad, a Vedic text. I'll chant the whole sukta, the whole hymn, but at the end, I'll only translate two verses which come near the beginning because most of the hymn the symbolism is quite obscure and is actually addressed to Agni, the god of fire. But it's also addressing Durga as an aspect. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Jata Vedase Sunavamaso Mamarati Yato Nidahati Vedaha Sanaf Parshadati Durgani Vishwanaveva Sindhunduritatyagnihi Tam Agnivarnam Tapasa Jwalantim Vairochanim Karma Phaleshu Jushtam Durgan Devi Gum Sharanamaham Prapadye Sutarasi Tarase Namaha Agne Tvam Parayanavyo Asman Swasti Bhirati Durgani Vishwa Puscha Prithvi Bahulana Urvi Bhavato Kaya Tanayaya Shanyo Vishwani no Durgaha Jata Veda Sindhunna Nava Duritati Parshi Agne Atrivan Manasagrinano Smakam Bodhya Vita Tanunam Pratanajitagum Sahamana Mugramagnigum Huvema Paramatsadhastat Sanaf Parshadati Durgani Vishwakshama Devo Atiduritatyagnihi Pratnoshikamityo Adhvareshu Sanacha Hota Navyascha Satsi Swang Chagne Tanuvam Pipraya Swasmabhyang Cha Saubhagamaya Jaswa Gobhir Jushtamayujo Nishiktam Tavendra Vishnoranusangcharema Nakasya Prishtamabhisamvasano Vaishnavim Loka Ihamadayantam Om Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumari Dhimahi Tanno Durgi Prachodayat Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. To her who is of the color of fire and blazing with tapas, who was born of that fire and who is worshipped through fruits of action, to that Durga, to that goddess, we take refuge by falling at her feet. O Mother Durga, we prostrate before you. Please ferry us mercifully over this ocean of the world. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So again, this morning, the topic is the Gods and Goddesses of India series. And this particular talk is on the goddess Durga, Mother Durga. One of the aspects of God as mother, one of the aspects of the Divine Mother. So as most of you will know, those of you with some familiarity with the Hindu tradition, God is worshipped in many different forms, many different aspects in the Hindu tradition, which has given it the reputation of being polytheistic. They believe in many gods. Well, the same accusation has been made against Christianity. Some Jews and some Muslims, other members of the Abrahamic religious family, have claimed that Christianity is polytheistic because they worship the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so, though most Christians would not accept the analogy, we see a clear analogy between the situation with Christianity and that of Hinduism. Hinduism believes in one reality. All of the different schools of Hinduism believe in one reality. Well, not all. Sankhya and Yoga don't believe in one reality, but most schools of Hinduism do believe in one reality. And that reality manifests in various gods and goddesses. So each of those gods and goddesses has their own personality. They have their own description. They have their own traditions of worship and so forth. But that, again, is very much like the situation in Christianity, especially in Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Christianity, where you have the worship. Of course, all Protestant Christians also are Trinitarian, but they don't have the same attitude towards worship as they do in the Catholics, Roman Catholics, and Eastern Orthodox. Where the three personalities of the Godhead are recognized, and where Mary also is recognized, not as deity, but as worshipful. And so in Hinduism, again, there's one reality which manifests in many deities. And so this series that I started back in the summertime, I guess, late spring or summer, has as its purpose the familiarization of these Hindu deities. And so let me say in introduction, before I begin to speak about Durga herself, that the way I have been approaching these deities in this series is to describe the history of the development of this tradition of worship of God in this particular form, the analysis of the meaning and symbology, and then the inner meaning of the deity. And so that's what I will follow with Mother Durga. And so I wanted to say in introduction that this would apply to the whole series, to any of the gods and goddesses that we study, that the analysis of their historical development, which can be seen from the inside as the historical manifestation of the deity. So to talk about the historical development sounds as if people got together and decided to make up a deity and then begin to worship it, and then they get some ideas and think, well, we could add this in or we could add that in, and gradually the tradition develops. But the Hindu view and the view from the inside is that this is the self-manifestation of the deity through time. As human civilization changes, people's needs change, and so the manifestation of these deities changes. And they have been both in Hinduism and in civilizations around the world. There have been deities that have arisen, been extremely popular for a long time, and then they disappear again. And so there's the self-manifestation of a particular aspect of the one reality. And sometimes that lasts for a long time, becomes very popular, and then sometimes that loses its effectiveness. From the human standpoint, and from the divine standpoint, the divine manifests other aspects instead of that aspect. But Durga has a long history. But again, in the introductory remarks, I want to add that this analysis of the symbology of the deity and all of that, that is important in the beginning for getting familiarity. If I'm first meeting a person, then I want to know about them, where they live, where they come from, their family, what work they do, what their hobbies are. If I meet somebody and want to get close to them and want to know them more intimately, then all of these things are important. Sitting and chatting and sharing experiences, and where were you in such and such a year, and have you ever been to such and such a place? So that's what we do when we meet somebody. We want to know all about them. But once we know a person, say it's a man meeting a young man meeting a young woman, and at first it just starts off as a friendship, and they just want to get to know each other. They share lots of things about themselves, and then they eventually get married. Well, once you are married, then all of that analysis, that becomes secondary. You know this person, this is my beloved wife. This is a person that I have tied my life to. And so she's my wife. What else do I need to say? It's no longer important, oh, where do you come from? What's your family like? How old are you? When is your birthday? All of those things are long, long gone. Or say your own mother. To other people who haven't met your mother, then they want to know all about her if they are interested in striking up a friendship or getting acquainted. But for you, for the child, mother is mother. Mother is everything. So you don't care, oh, mother, where did you come from? What is your birthday? Well, yeah, that comes along with just knowing your mother. It's not something you have to inquire about. But to you, mother is mother. You're not thinking about her symbolic meaning or whatever, or the associations of your mother. In fact, that's one of the things that happens when we grow up. And suddenly we discover that our mother and father are people. It's a striking discovery to discover that your mother and father are people. They have a whole human history. They have their individual likes and dislikes. They have things that they used to do when they were young, games that they played when they were children, friends that they had before we came onto the scene and that disappeared before we came onto the scene that we know nothing about. So there's a whole world that you discover as an adult about your mother and father. But to the child, mother is just mother. She's everything. And so the point of saying all of that is that in the beginning, when we're getting introduced to these deities, then it's helpful to know the symbolic power of the image, what the different symbols associated with the deity mean, the different names of the deity, the different associations of the deity and so forth, the ways in which she or he is worshipped, and whether they belong to the family of the Shaiva deities or the Vaishnava deities or just the Devi herself, and all of that becomes important in the beginning. But once you have come close to the deity is the divine itself. The deity is reality in itself. And those things may be there in the back of your mind. Yes, they remain there in the back of the mind, but if you're a devotee of Kali and you're going to Kali, you don't think, okay, now this hand means that, and that hand means this, and this hand means that, and that hand means this. And then let's see, she's got 52 heads around her neck. Those are the 52 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. And the girdle of arms around her waist, that means such and such. No. If you become a devotee of Kali, you go to Kali because she is the mother herself. She's reality itself. And you go with love for the mother of the universe. You don't need to know all of that, even though you may have studied it in the beginning. And so, again, the purpose of these introductory remarks is to say that this analysis and the historical analysis and the symbolic analysis and all of that has its place, it's an important place for familiarizing ourselves with the reality. But we shouldn't think that that is what the deity means. No, the deity means reality itself, the divine itself, the infinite, inconceivable reality itself. That's what each of these deity means. But each one is like a window through which we see the infinite. And some windows are round, some are triangular, some are rectangular, some are square. There are all kinds of, some are stained glass, there are all kinds of windows. But what we're looking to the window for is to see the infinite sky beyond. And so the deity is like that. So again, we'll give historical analysis and symbolical description, and then the devotional traditions and so forth. So the importance of Durga, coming now to Durga herself. She's an aspect of the Divine Mother, of course. And in India, there are many aspects of the Divine Mother who are worshipped. But Durga is associated with Shiva. So she comes in that tradition, whereas Lakshmi is associated with Vishnu. Saraswati is very, very, very loosely associated with Brahma. Saraswati the first deity that I took up in this series 3-4 months ago. Saraswati is a form of the Divine Mother who is tied to Brahma, but very loosely. The Brahma doesn't really figure. For the devotees of Saraswati, they don't think about Brahma. Saraswati is the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of learning, the goddess of the arts, the goddess of language, the goddess of culture and civilization. And so the connection with Brahma is very loose. But Lakshmi is more closely tied to Vishnu, and Durga more closely tied to Shiva, with an important exception, which I will come to. So she's associated with Shiva, and you could say she's a warrior aspect of Parvati. Parvati, when you're thinking of Shiva and the Divine Mother associated with Shiva, Shiva as the deity who most clearly represents the absolute, the transcendent, Brahman itself. Then the Divine Mother, the power, the creative power associated with Shiva, most often is Parvati. And so Durga, you could think of Durga as sort of a warrior aspect of Parvati. But again, the warrior nature shouldn't be overdone. It's just that as she's described in the Chandi, traditional text, which describes Durga. There she's presented as a warrior who fights the demonic forces in the universe and brings back the reign of the good and the divine, the spiritual. So again, she's associated with Parvati, with Uma, with Sati, who was sacrificed, with Kali also. All of these are different manifestations of the same aspect of the Divine Mother who's associated with Shiva. But whereas Kali is the aspect of the Divine Mother, or is an aspect of the Divine Mother who is standing on the corpse of Shiva, in the image of Durga there is no Shiva, as we'll see later when I describe the form of Durga, how she appears to her devotees. And so Durga, though she's loosely associated with Shiva, and in that tradition of Parvati, Uma, Sati, etc., she's usually worshipped as reality itself, and that will come to as well. So she has great importance in the Shakta tradition, the tradition of the worshippers of the Divine Mother. And she has central importance in eastern India. In Bengali culture, Durga is one of the main deities worshipped in Bengal and wherever there are Bengalis. In Nepal, Durga is very important. In Bangladesh, which of course is greater Bengali culture, in Orissa, Jharkhand, etc. The eastern part of India and the places around Bengal, including Nepal, Durga is very important, but her worship is found in all parts of India. It's just that in those parts, you find that she is the dominant deity. And in our tradition, in the Ramakrishna tradition, she's very important because she figures largely in the lives of Sri Ramakrishna and the Holy Mother. In fact, Holy Mother is seen as a manifestation of Durga. She's a manifestation of all aspects of the Divine Mother. Sometimes she's seen as a manifestation of Kali, sometimes as Jagadhatri, etc., or as Lakshmi, or especially as Saraswati. But she's also seen as an incarnation of Durga. And so at our Santa Barbara convent in California, north of Los Angeles, where they have a big celebration of Durga every fall, coming in a couple of weeks. They will be having their large worship of Durga Puja, where many, many people come. There they worship Durga not in an image of Durga. They worship Durga in the photo of the Holy Mother. They worship her as Durga. And so you'll find when you read the life and the conversations of Sri Ramakrishna, the life and as well as the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, that Durga often comes into the picture of Sri Ramakrishna's life. And then Swami Vivekananda himself, who most often taught from the standpoint of knowledge, from the standpoint of jnana, from the standpoint of Advaita, non-dualism. But he established at Belur Mutt, the headquarters of the order, he established late in his life the worship of Durga, the ritual worship of Durga, which is carried on every year since that time. In fact, he invited the Holy Mother to come as the very embodiment of Mother Durga, and she often used to go to Belur Mutt at the time of Durga Puja. Though they would worship Durga traditionally in the image, they would have an image made every year and worshipped in the image, but Holy Mother also would come for the worship as the living Durga. In fact, when Swami Vivekananda conceived of the idea of beginning the Durga Puja at Belur Mutt, again, it was a big festival already in Bengali culture, so he didn't institute the worship of Durga just at Belur Mutt, he brought it there. He told Swami Brahmananda one day that he was thinking of, or that he wanted to begin the worship of Mother Durga at Belur Mutt. And Swami Brahmananda told him, in fact, actually it happened the other way. Swami Brahmananda told Swamiji one day that he had seen Mother Durga walking across the Ganges, walking over the Ganges, and coming to Belur Mutt. And Swamiji said, well, I have been thinking to begin this year with the worship of Durga here at Belur Mutt. And so that is confirmation that this should go forward. And so thus began the worship of Durga in Belur Mutt. So let me say one other introductory thing that I forgot to mention that is important. And again, this is for all of the whole series on gods and goddesses. And that is that, first of all, in the Hindu tradition or the Vedanta tradition, you need not believe in any god or goddess if you don't want to. Just the search for self-knowledge. That itself is enough if that's what you want. You don't need any ritual, you don't need any mythology, you don't need any stories, you don't need any gods or goddesses. That should always be held strong, and that's why Swami Vivekananda established the Advaitashrama, where there was to be no worship and no deities at Advaitashrama, so that remains as a strong, independent tradition. But for those who are attracted to the deities of Hinduism, those who are attracted to deity worship, then what we want to do through that is to live in the consciousness of the deities. They become real to us, more real than this, more real than this. Look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna's father and the great master, which is the biography of Sri Ramakrishna by his disciple Swami Sharadananda. There's a long description of Sri Ramakrishna's father. And Sri Ramakrishna's father, when he would go to pick flowers, he would see the goddess come and bend down the limbs of the trees so that he could easily pick the flowers. He lived among the gods and goddesses. Sri Ramakrishna's mother also was conscious of the gods and goddesses, a living consciousness of their presence and of their activity, and occasionally seeing them in manifested form. And so that even now you find sometimes in India people who have that experience of the gods and goddesses. And so again, that's if one is attracted to deity worship, to the manifestation of the one reality in the form of personalities, of deities, then what we seek to do is to live in their presence, to live in the awareness of their living presence. One of the things that fascinated me when I first went to India was to find that there, mythology is living. It's not a dead system of ancient stories that were told to entertain children. But there, the experience is living and still living among many people. So let me come back to the topic. Now so I talked about briefly about the importance of Durga to our tradition. Let me now speak about the history of the emergence or the self-manifestation of Durga. Durga is one of the very ancient goddesses. She goes back to Vedic times, and you find that first the etymology of her name, Durga, is from Dur, Gam. Gam means to go, and Dur means difficult, difficult to go. And so Durga is, the name is derived as meaning invincible, difficult to go to, difficult to cross over. That she is invincible, inviolable. In fact, the word Durga, without the long at the end for the goddess, meaning feminine, just the word Durga means fort in India, because a fort is a place which is difficult to cross, difficult to get into, difficult to go to. So Durga means fort, and Durga, the goddess, is she who is invincible. And next week I will speak about the Chandi, the scripture which describes Durga. And there I'll tell how Durga came to be according to the mythological story. And there you'll see more clearly how it is that her name is appropriate, as she who is invincible. So for now, just to know that that is what her name means. And she's sometimes called, which seems at first like a contradiction, Durgati Nashini. Nashini, she who destroys, Durgati, which also comes from Durgam. But Durgati means misfortune, coming to bad things, coming into bad things. So Durgati is misfortunes. And so Durgati Nashini, Durga, the invincible one, is Durgati Nashini, she who is the destroyer of all misfortune. So, again, coming back to the historical development of Durga, the Vedic evidence of Durga, there's an ancient seal, of course it's ancient, found in the Indus Valley civilization. Of course, because the Indus Valley was thousands of years ago, variously dated, but at least 2,000 years before Christ was when the civilization ended, or 1,800 years before Christ was when the civilization ended. And so it had a long existence prior to that. So there, a seal which seems to picture the goddess Durga, a goddess seated on a lion. And so it may go back to ancient, the image of Durga may go back to ancient Vedic times. And then there's the Devi Sukta, the hymn to the goddess in the Rig Veda, in the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda. The Devi Sukta, or the hymn to the goddess, is the first evidence of the full non-dualistic experience, the Advaitic experience, the identity with reality itself. And that experience came to a woman seer named Vak, which means the goddess of speech. And so this goddess, this rishi, this sage, who was a woman, who was named Vak, and who was herself the daughter of another Vedic sage, she gave forth her experience in the Devi Sukta, the hymn to the goddess, where she is identified with reality itself, and thus expressing her experience as reality in this manifest world, she gives experience to her identity with God as mother. So let me read that to you. Part of it is obscure in meaning, but it's a beautiful hymn. And so something of the inner meaning will come through, even though some of the symbolism will be obscure to you. So this is Vak giving expression to her experience, identified with reality itself, with the non-dual state. I travel with the gods, the Rudras and the Vasus, with the Adityas and the Vishwadevas I wander. That is, I move among all of the gods. I hold aloft both Varuna and Mitra, Indra and Agni, and the pair of Ashwins. I hold aloft, I support the deities themselves. That it is in my being that they exist, they are supported. I cherish and sustain high-swelling Soma and Twashtar. I support Pushan and Bhaga. I, loaded with wealth, the zealous sacrificer who pours the juice and offers his oblations. That is, I am the support as reality itself. I am the support of the worshiper, the sacrificer. I am the queen, that is the queen of the universe. I am the queen, the gatherer up of treasures, most thoughtful, first of those who merit worship. She is the first of those who merit worship. Thus, gods have established me in many places with many homes to enter and abide in. Everywhere is her home. Through me alone, all eat the food that feeds them. Each man who sees, breathes, hears the word outspoken, does that through me. They know it not, yet I reside in the essence of the universe. Hear one and all the truth as I declare it. I verily myself announce and utter the word that gods and men alike shall welcome. I make the man I love exceedingly mighty, make him nourished, a sage, and one who knows Brahman. I bend the bow for Rudra, that is Shiva, that his arrow may strike and slay the hater of devotion. I rouse and order battle for the people. I created earth and heaven and reside as their inner controller. On the world's summit, I bring forth Sky, the Father. My home is in the waters, in the ocean as mother. Thence I pervade all existing creatures as their inner supreme self and manifest them with my body. I created all worlds at my will without any higher being and permeate and dwell within them. The eternal and infinite consciousness is I. It is my greatness dwelling in everything. So that came from the mouth of the great woman sage, Vak, a human being, but who had realized her identity with reality itself. And when she speaks these beautiful, profound words, she's speaking the words which apply to the Divine Mother, which apply to Durga. And again, that is why this hymn is considered so important, because it is the first clear expression of the Divine Mother in all of her glory. As I spoke once before of the God as Mother, just God as Mother in general, I spoke about how the idea of God as Mother arose in the Vedas. And here you find this purest expression of that idea. So there's the Devi Suktam, which I just spoke of. Then there's the Durga Suktam, which I chanted at the beginning of the beginning of the lecture this morning. I chanted the whole Durga Suktam, which again begins Jata Veda Se, which is addressing Agni, fire. But then then comes in the goddess Durga, where it says, to her who is of the color of fire, and that again is why she's associated with fire, to her who is the color of fire and blazing with tapas, who was born of that fire and who is worshipped through fruits of action, to that Durga, to that Devi, I take refuge by falling at her feet. O Mother Durga, I prostrate before you. Please ferry me mercifully across the ocean of existence. And so she was seen in this hymn, Durga, as the power of the fire, the reality and the power of the fire. So that association with fire was important. And that's why Durga in color is golden in color, because she has the color of fire. So there's the Devi Sukta, which I translated the Durga Sukta. And then in the Kena Upanishad, it ends with a story about Uma Haimavati, Uma of the Himalayas. And she is seen as the power of Brahman. So all of these ideas of the Divine Mother, which are all expressed fully in the image of Durga, come from Vedic times. So the different aspects of the goddess have very ancient roots, just as when I spoke about Saraswati, her very ancient roots. And just as I said that Saraswati, she began as the river, the goddess of the river Saraswati. And then the river dried up. Indian civilization had to move its location to the east, to the Ganges plain, the plain of the Ganges. But Saraswati continued as an independent goddess. But even now, when you see a painting of or drawing of Saraswati, you see the river beside her, because that association goes back to early Vedic times, earliest Vedic times. And so with Durga, that association with fire remains, as we'll see later. So then you come to the Mahabharata, a very ancient text. Speaking of the Vedic times, late Vedic times, but probably written after the end of the Vedic age, or at least in its present form written after the end of the Vedic age, but telling the story of the late Vedic period. There you find that Yudhishthira and Arjuna, the most prominent two of the 5 Pandava brothers, both of them address hymns to Durga in the Mahabharata. So again, you see from the early Vedic times down through the Mahabharata, and then you come to the Puranas, which came after the Mahabharata. You find the Markandeya Purana, which is one of the oldest, and it is a non-sectarian Purana. There are Puranas which are devoted to a particular deity, like Shiva or Vishnu, or to particular incarnation, etc. But the Markandeya Purana is one of the Mahapuranas, one of the 18 great Puranas, and it's non-sectarian. One of the indications that it was a very ancient Purana. And it reads almost as a supplement to the Mahabharata. It seems to come from that same tradition as of the Mahabharata. And so there in the Markandeya Upanishad, you find the Devi Mahatmyam, also known as the Durga Saptashati, and also known as the Chandi. So it's known by these 3 names, and that is the main text for the worshippers of Durga. Many people recite the whole thing every day. Some of you knew Swami Tathagatananda, a great Swami who is head of our Vedanta Society of New York, before present Swami Sarvapriyananda. Swami Tathagatananda ji, he used to chant the Chandi every day, the whole of it every day. And so there are many people who recite the whole of it every day, and some recite parts of it every day. And it's considered that the regular chanting of the Chandi gives tremendous strength, energy, power to destroy obstacles. And so that the Markandeya Purana, one of the ancient Puranas, was the source of the Chandi. And then you find the Devi Bhagavata Purana. The Devi Bhagavatam is also one of the 18 Mahapuranas, one of the 18 great Puranas. There are other Upa-Puranas, etc., many Puranas, but there are 18 which are considered the great Puranas. So the Devi Bhagavata, the whole scripture is devoted to the Divine Mother. God as mother, to the goddess. And Swami Vijnanananda, the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, he translated it into English. One of several things that he translated into English. And that text, the whole text, is sacred to the worshippers of the Divine Mother, and especially to worshippers of Durga. That text contains the Devi Bhagavata, the Devi Gita, the Devi Gita. And the Devi Gita is to the worshippers of the Divine Mother what the Bhagavad Gita is to others. The Bhagavad Gita is recognized as probably the greatest of all of the many Gitas, Gita meaning song. And so there are many Gitas in the Hindu tradition. The Bhagavad Gita is recognized as the greatest and the most ancient of all of them. But the Devi Gita also is very important, though it's not much known even in India, except among the worshippers of the Divine Mother, and not much known outside of India. In fact, this is a translation and commentary with lots of scholarly notes of the Devi Gita. The Gita itself is only 503 verses, I think it is, somewhat shorter than the Bhagavad Gita, which itself is short. But this is long because of introductory text, commentary, notes, scholarly notes, etc. And so this itself is a wonderful text. And I wanted to read for you the English translation. I can't find the Sanskrit, or I finally just before I came in to give this talk, I finally found a place where I can download the Sanskrit text of what I'm going to read to you. But to do that, I have to join the website. And so I didn't have time for all of that. I had to come in here to give the talk. So this is at the beginning of the Devi Gita. There's what's called a Navashloki, which means the hymn in 9 verses, which is said to be the essence of the Devi Gita, the hymn of the Divine Mother. And so I'll just read the translation. It begins with the Gayatri, addressed to the Divine Mother, which is, "We know you as Mahalakshmi. We meditate on you as the Shakti of all. May the goddess inspire that knowledge and meditation of ours. Hail to her in the form of the cosmic body. Hail to her in the form of the cosmic soul. Hail to her in the unmanifest state. Hail to her in the form of the glorious Brahman." So you see here that the goddess is identified with reality itself. This is her body. Everything visible is the body of the Divine Mother. And then hail to her in the form of the cosmic soul. That is the indwelling spirit within all, the consciousness within all beings. And then hail to her in her unmanifest form. That is when the universe retracts back, after billions and billions of years, retracts back into a seed state. Then the Divine Mother, who is this universe itself, she goes back into an unmanifested state. And then when creation happens again, she comes out of that unmanifested state and we see the universe. And then it says salutations to her who is Brahman itself, the absolute, the reality itself. So again, in one sense, in the Hindu tradition, Shiva is the absolute and the Divine Mother is the creative power. But to the worshippers of the Divine Mother, she is everything. She is Brahman itself. She is consciousness itself, and she is the power of creation. There's no second who is doing something else besides the Divine Mother. She is everything. Shiva has disappeared. And then through her power of ignorance, that is Maya, avidya, she shows herself as the world, like a rope appearing as a serpent, a wreath, and the like. So like we see a rope on the ground and mistake it for a snake. But it's actually a rope all of the time. So she is Brahman itself, who appears as this universe, just as a snake appears to be in place of a rope. Through her power of knowledge, vidya, she dissolves the world back into herself. We glorify her, ruler of the universe. Maya is variously called knowledge, illusion, matter, nature, energy, or the unborn. Those versed in the Shaiva works, the works devoted to Shiva, call it intelligence. From the practical point of view, that is from the Vyavaharika standpoint, our transactional reality, from the viewpoint of transactional reality, Maya is regarded as self-evident. That is, this is self-evident. In reality, however, this does not exist. Only the Supreme exists in an absolute sense. And then the Divine Mother herself speaks, "My sacred syllable, Hrim," the Bija mantra of Durga, transcends the distinction of named and name, of Nam and Nami, beyond all dualities. So her mantra transcends the duality of the name and that which is named. That mantra is whole, infinite being, consciousness, and bliss. One should meditate on that reality within the flaming light of consciousness, again, through that mantra. Fixing the mind upon me as the goddess transcending all space and time, one quickly merges with me through realizing the oneness of the soul and Brahman. The Atman and Brahman are realized as one through her. Just this Brahman is immortal. In front is Brahman, behind is Brahman, on the right and the left, it extends above and below. The whole universe is nothing but this Brahman, the absolute. Like clarified butter hidden in milk, knowledge dwells in every being. One should stir continuously using the mind as the churning stick. So that's the Navashloki, which is considered to contain, it's not in the Devi Gita, it's associated with the Devi Gita as expressing the essence, the abbreviated essence of the Devi Gita. And so all of these show the ancient tradition of Durga worship and goddess worship, because the Devi Gita is not specifically Durga, it's God as mother coming down to us. And then there are the Shakta Upanishads. I mention them now later than these other things because the Shakta Upanishads are definitely of a later date than the ancient Upanishads, the major Upanishads. They identify Durga again with the Atman and with Brahman, as what I just read did as well. So the Shakta tradition of India, the tradition of the worship of the Divine Mother, is a non-dualistic tradition. It's called Shakta Advaita or Shakta Advaita, to combine the two according to the rules of Sanskrit grammar. The non-dualism of the Shaktas, where the Divine Mother is everything, and I am the Divine Mother, but that I is the I of the Divine Mother, not the I that I claim for myself. The I that I claim for myself is the ahamkara, the ego, the limited I sense. But the real I, when I say I should learn to see that I as the I of the Divine Mother, who is reality itself. And so the Shakta Upanishads express, and the whole Shakta tradition expresses this non-duality. Most of you know that the famous Soham mantra, which is Soham, I am He. So once one of our nuns, Bhakti Prana, who long passed away, but I knew her, a very wonderful nun in Hollywood, she told me the story herself, that she was teaching a group of children to meditate, and she told them to say Soham, Soham, and as she explained the meaning that I am that I am everywhere, etc. And then she said, and those of you who like, your girls who are here, you can, if you like, say Saham, I am she. So boys can say Soham and girls can say Saham. And so they all started repeating that. And she noticed one of the boys was saying Saham, Saham. So whether that was confusion or whether it was he was a budding Shakta, I don't know. But we can use Saham also, I am she, I am she. So now let me talk about the appearance of Durga. She's golden in color, the color of fire, and also golden, the color of consciousness. But again, that ancient association with fire. And she has 10 arms, sometimes 8 arms, but usually 10 arms. And 10 arms, why? Because 2 arms aren't enough. And also because she is active in all 10 directions. The 4 points of the compass, and then the 8 cardinal points, and then above and below. And so she's active in all 10 directions. And in each hand, she holds a something. And so in one hand, she holds a conch shell, the sank, or the conch shell. The conch shell was, as in many ancient cultures, coastal cultures, the conch shell was regarded as sacred. And it's, in the Hindu tradition, it's associated with pranava, that is Om. Because you remember, as I still remember as a child, the fascination as a child. My mother told me to put a conch shell up to my ear, and she said, you can hear the ocean, and the ocean remains in the conch shell. You can hear it if you put it up to your ear. And yes, you put the conch shell to your ear, and you hear that the sound of the ocean. And so that's considered to be representative of the sound of Om, out of which this universe has come. And so holding the conch shell, holding Om, shows that the creation is under her control. She is the source of creation because it's out of Om that this universe has come. And then she's holding the flame, again, because of the Vedic connection of fire and Durga, as seen in the Durga Sukta, which I chanted. So she's holding flame, and the flame represents the destructive power. That at the end of a cycle of creation, after billions and billions, many billions of years, this universe dissolves back into flame, back into energy, and then from energy back into a quiet seed state. And so destruction also is under her control. Creation, destruction. And then she holds the chakra, like Vishnu. She holds the chakra, the discus. And the discus represents several things. It represents that she sits at the center point of the discus, and the whole universe revolves around her. And also the discus is also a weapon which was used in ancient times. It's a weapon, but here it represents mainly the swirling of the universe around her. And so she is the master or mistress of preservation. So creation, the conch shell, destruction, the flame, and the discus, the preservation of the universe. She wields the discus in order to preserve the universe. Then she's holding the trident with which she's stabbing the demon, which we'll come to. The trident represents the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. If you don't know what they are, listen to our Bhagavad Gita class. I'll put in a little plug. So for the trident or the trishul, the three gunas, so that shows that she is she who is trigunatit, she who is beyond the three gunas, but she manifests as the three gunas, and she is the controller of the three gunas. We, in our manifest being, not in the Atman, but in our manifest being, we are controlled by the gunas, but she is the controller of the gunas. And then she sometimes is holding the vajra, the thunderbolt, which shows that she is indomitable, invincible, that tremendous indomitable power that she holds. Then she holds a sword. The sword is the sword of knowledge, the discrimination which cuts through ignorance. So she's the wielder of that. She also oftentimes has an axe. So the axe is that which shows her power to cut through karma. With a sword, you can kill somebody with a sword, but with an axe, you can chop off limbs and chop off heads. A rather gruesome image, I admit. But the idea is that with an axe, she can cut through the ropes of karma. With one swing of her axe, she can destroy karma. So we who are bound by karma, and it seems by endless threads of karma wound about our being that we'll never escape from, with one swing of her axe, she cuts through the bondage of karma. She sometimes is holding a snake, which represents the Kundalini power, that she is the Kundalini power and she is the awakener of the Kundalini as well. Then she holds the gada, the mace. The gada, or the military mace, the club, shows that she has authority over the universe. And then she holds the bow and arrows. The bow and arrows means that she is invincible in action, effective in warding off effective in warding off evil, but also it represents energy in its potential and kinetic form. Because the arrows, when they're not launched by the bow, they are potential energy. And when they're launched by the bow, so the bow gives the idea of kinesis or kinetic energy. So she is both potential and kinetic energy. And then she holds the lotus, which is the image, the traditional image, ancient image in India of purity and of devotion and of love. That she who appears so fierce with all of these weapons, that she is approached best through purity and through love. Through pure love is the way to approach her. So she has, like all the Hindu deities, she has a vahana, that is a vehicle, an animal that she sits on, that she rides. Each deity is associated with a vehicle. And so she sits on the lion, sometimes a tiger, but more often a lion. King of the jungle, the lord of the jungle, the lord of all other animals. The symbolism there is that the jiva, an individual, me or you, an individual like us, if we devote ourselves to her, we become like the lion, fearless and fearless and full of power. And so that is us, our potentiality that she's riding on. And then she's shown slaying the demon Mahishasura. Mahishasura is a great demon which we'll describe next week when I talk about the Chandi. But it was to conquer Mahishasura that Durga first manifested according to the mythological tale. Not according to a historical analysis, but a mythological tale. She first manifested in order to slay the demon Mahishasura, who had taken over the universe. And but the interesting thing is that he is shown in many images as she's slaying him, first she fought with him for many days. They did battle, and finally she succeeds in slaying him. But when he is slayed, he shows submission and devotion to her who is slaying him, which is a profound aspect of Hinduism, that demons in Hinduism are not completely bad. Demons are those who have been overcome by egotism, by greed, by ignorance, by delusion, by destructive tendencies, but they also are the Atman. And so when they are subdued by the goddess, then they also turn their attention up to her in devotion. So even the demons are saved in Hinduism. Nothing in reality is separate from the goddess. So finally, let me just say a little bit about her festivals, and then I'll conclude, and that very briefly. That the main festival for the worship of Durga, which is sort of a national celebration among Bengalis, is Durga Puja, which comes during the famous Navaratri. Navaratri means the 9 sacred nights, and it's celebrated in different ways in different parts of India. But in Bengali culture and in the parts of East India that are close to Bengal, then it is celebrated with Durga Puja, the worship of the Divine Mother Durga. And the actual worship takes place for 4 days. Let's see, no, actually 5 days. There's Shashti, starting with Shashti. The main worship starts on Saptami, the 7th day of the 9 days, and goes up to the 10th. But it begins on the 6th day of the fortnight. And so that coincides with the autumn festival, harvest festival in India. And so in North India, you find that it's associated with Rama, and it's recognized in Bengal, the connection between Durga and Rama, Sri Ram. That Sri Rama, in order to defeat Ravana, he worships Durga. And so that association between Rama and Durga is there. And so in North India, they worship Ram during this time. In the East India, it's Durga. In South India, it's Saraswati, and there are other different South Indian traditions. So then there's also the worship of Durga in the spring harvest festival as well, but that's not as big as the fall worship of Durga, which is a huge celebration. And so let me conclude. And then if there are 1 or 2 questions, I'll take those. And so I'll conclude just by saying that, again, this analysis of Durga and what her different implements that she's holding in different arms mean, that's all important in the beginning. And if we want to understand Durga, then that forms sort of a background understanding. But eventually, Durga, like any of the gods or goddesses that we come to with heartfelt worship, then all of that sort of falls to the side. It doesn't disappear. It's there in the background, but it stays in the background because she is reality itself. She is the Divine Mother herself. She is Mother herself, my own mother, who manifested as my physical mother, who manifested as my guru, my spiritual mother, father, who manifests as this universe itself. But she is the mother, and one goes to her as one goes to one's mother, as the embodiment of all accepting love. But this love, the love of the Divine Mother, is a love of the one who is, again, reality itself, and who grants us liberation. So let me now see if there are any questions. I'll take those, and if not, no questions. Okay. I'll give the announcements, and then if the question appears after the announcements, I'll take that. Otherwise, we'll just go straight to the conclusion. So the announcements are, on Tuesday, we'll have the Bhagavad Gita class as usual, and then the Bhagavad Gita class as usual at 7:30 in the evening, live streamed. On Thursday, we will have the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class as usual at 11 o'clock in the morning, live streamed. And next Saturday, we have the Durga Puja. So that's why I chose to speak on Durga this morning. So next Saturday, we will have Durga Puja. The actual Durga Puja comes in the following week, but we always have our Durga Puja on the previous Saturday so that we don't conflict with the Durga Bari, the local Durga temple here, their worship on the actual days of Durga Puja. So our worship will be on Saturday. People will not be able to come during the worship. It will be live streamed, and so you can see it from home. And we will have music. Rupa Ghosh, our wonderful devotee and singer, will sing during the puja. And so you can watch the puja. It'll be here in the hall. And at the end of the puja, it'll start at 10 o'clock. The bhog, the food offering, and the arati will be at 12 o'clock. And then those who want to are most welcome to come to the temple after 12:30, between 12:30 and 2:30, those 2 hours. After 2:30, everything will be closed. But between 12:30 and 2:30, those who wish to come can come. We will have ushers who will be positioned to let one family unit or one individual person in at a time to come, bow to the image, offer a flower, and then to exit through another pathway while another family unit or individual comes. And then you'll be given some fruit and sweet prasad. So we were not having a whole meal of prasad as we normally do. And obviously all of this is because of the pandemic. So all of those who wish to come, and let me also say that Durga Puja is the time of the year when we get by far the most donations of the whole year at Durga Puja. And the center is dependent on those donations for its annual functioning. We get money at Durga Puja, which helps us throughout the rest of the year or throughout the next year. And so let me ask people that don't forget that we depend on you for donations to help us carry our work forward. And so we know that now is a difficult time economically for some people. Some people have lost their jobs. But those who are able to give something, please give to the temple. We don't normally ask for money, but I am asking now that those who can give, please don't forget to give, especially at this time of Durga Puja. So with that, I will close. And assuming that there are no questions, let me go back and chant what I chanted at the beginning from the Durga Sukta. I won't chant this time. I won't chant the whole suktam. I will just chant the two verses 3 and 4. Or actually, it's not verses 3 and 4. It's verse 2, which is to Durga. Tam agnivarnam tapasa jwalantim vairochanim karma paleshu jushtam Durgan Devi Gum Sharanamaham Prapadye Sutarasi Tarase Namaha. To her, Durga, who is of the color of fire and blazing with tapas, who was born of that fire and who is worshipped through the fruits of action, to that Durga, to that goddess, we take refuge by falling at her feet. O Mother Durga, we prostrate before you. Ferry us mercifully over this ocean of existence. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.